Hello to all of our school ambassadors across the UK. It is a pleasure to welcome you to our final School Ambassador Masterclass of the year. We hope that you've enjoyed all of the ones so far, and we can't wait to see the art that you created as a result of James's session last week. But this final session is our Story in Nature session. Now, as always, all of our Ambassador Masterclasses are another vehicle, another way for you guys to be an amazing force for nature. We know you are an amazing force for nature. It's just to give you some different ideas and tips on other things you can do to share your passion, to explore your passion with nature in different ways. And we have some amazingly talented ambassadors that help us because they have skills and talent in areas that, if I'm being honest, I don't, guys. And they can help us use those to connect to nature a little bit more in different ways. As part of that, we're connecting, we're learning, and really importantly, we're sharing that power of trees so we can spread the word to others. Now, today's masterclass, I'm absolutely delighted to welcome Daisy, who is our ambassador leading the session. Now, you may recognise Daisy's face because you will have seen her during our live festival. So I will let Daisy introduce herself and explain a little bit about why she's here doing this session for us today.
Thank you so much, Katie. Yeah, the festival was so much fun. That already feels like it's so long ago, but it was so amazing to have so many people join us and celebrate our amazing Beacon schools and all of our winners. So that was such a brilliant day. But yeah, my name's Daisy, and I'm a Tree Council Young Ambassador. And so yeah, I guess I'll tell you a bit about myself. So I'm an actor and a storyteller, and so my passion is telling stories, but particularly stories that have a link to nature. So not surprisingly, my favourite genre of stories is fantasy, because so many fantasy books and films have been inspired by places across the country and across the globe that are spaces of nature, that are forests or woodlands. So, for example, Robin Hood, Narnia, The Lord of the Rings, they're some of my favourite stories because I feel transported to another world entirely when I see how it's been kind of created. But it's amazing that it's actually been inspired by real places that exist. I find that so fascinating. So when I go out in nature, I find that I'm constantly inspired because of all the amazing stories that nature sort of makes me think about that have been written before. And I actually got to be in my own story about nature. So over Christmas, I played the main character of Mary Lennox in a play called The Secret Garden. How perfect was that for me? And so I got to explore my genuine love of nature and the transformative power of nature. Remember that word, the transformative power of nature through this character of Mary. She turns up at her uncle's manor in the Yorkshire rural area, and she finds a secret garden and she brings it back to life. But she learns about gardening and she learns about trees and plants, because when she finds it, she thinks the whole garden is dead, but she ends up bringing it back to life. So I got to really explore that and channel so much of my genuine love for nature into that story and into that character. And my little best friend was a robin, which was just fantastic. So I loved it. So that's a little bit about what I like to do. And my fascination, my connection with nature, why nature and why trees? Well, there are so many amazing things that trees and woodlands and forests can do. You might have heard of, if you've not, you can ask your teachers, you might have heard of something called the Wood Wide Web, and I've got a picture of it on this slide at the bottom there. The Wood Wide Web is how fungi and trees connect underneath the soil and speak to each other. They send messages about how healthy they are, if any of them has got a disease, if they're lacking water or nutrients. If there's a pest in the area, they can speak to each other underground. I think that just blows my mind. I also think what's so amazing and what is so easily forgotten about nature is that it's all alive. I think we look at trees and we see that they are, hard wood, and they stand so tall and strong and still. And we forget they are alive, and fungi is alive, plants are alive. Isn't that just fantastic? Which means that they grow and they interact and react to what's going on around them. I just think that's brilliant. I also think that our natural world is so worth protecting. We have to learn, care, and share about the natural world and about trees, because this is the one planet that we've got, and we've got to take care of it, because this is all we really have. So it's really important that we're protecting it. It also has so many benefits. I love walking through forests and woodlands because it makes me feel so relaxed. I sleep better, it makes me calm, and I find that I'm drawn to areas like rivers and islands and forests and valleys, because I just love to immerse myself in all of that natural space. And since I've been a young ambassador, some of you might have seen me at some of the events. If you came to Big Bang, or if you joined us at the festival, if you joined us last year at Hampton Court Palace, for example, I've done quite a few things like that. So I've been at Birmingham Botanical Gardens, Hampton Court Palace. I've been at Victoria Station with our tree installation, speaking to members of the public. I worked last year in Glasgow with National Rail volunteers, tree planting. I've worked at RHS Wisley. We've done the festival. There's been so many exciting things that I've done since being an ambassador. I've loved planting acorns with so many of you, writing pledges for nature with so many of you. It really has been such an exciting time, and I can't wait to talk to you about stories today.
Fabulous. Thank you, Daisy. Just bear with me. I think one of our schools is just having some technical difficulties. So I'm just making sure that I'm not keeping them out of the session myself by not admitting them. So hopefully they are managing to join us. And I think what is so important, I think, from listening to all of that amazing information there that Daisy shared, is we love that you guys have a passion for nature. We love that you guys have a passion for trees. That doesn't necessarily mean that when you get older, you have to work outside with trees every day. You can do all sorts of different roles and jobs. James last week with his art, Daisy here with her acting and storytelling. They're not necessarily, you don't necessarily have to be with trees every single day or outside every single day, but you can still share that passion and share that love through all sorts of different careers and jobs and roles later in life. And so that's what we want to encourage, is that you keep that passion, and you can use it in loads of different ways, like some of those amazing things that Daisy mentioned there. And we are so grateful that she's joined us, and she has been incredibly busy all over the country, representing the Tree Council and the Young Tree Champions. So really exciting, and we hope that you look forward to the session and learning a little bit more about what Daisy mentioned there about storytelling. So this is what we're doing today. We are looking to create engaging stories in nature by building exciting and engaging characters. And that's one of the things that Daisy mentioned in that introduction about those characters that we create, and learning how to use different devices, different vocabulary to make those characters come to life.
Yeah, absolutely. So this slide here, you might recognize some of those stories, some of those books. Maybe it's something that you've written, or you've watched a film adaptation of it. I'm sure pretty much all of us know Winnie the Pooh, right? So I've included some. Hi guys, I can see you all there. That's brilliant. Hello. So I've included some examples of stories here. So I've already mentioned Robin Hood and the Lord of the Rings. They're some of my favorite. But Winnie the Pooh is also set in a woodland. It was inspired by the woodland that A. Milner spent time in with his son. The picture on the top right is, I'm not going to try and say the name of the forest because I always say it wrong, but it's a forest in France, and it's part of Arthurian legend. So it inspired a myth about the golden tree in Arthurian legend. So if you've watched Arthur or Merlin or anything like that, that was inspired there. The bottom left picture is me in the secret garden. So that was me immersed in the garden that we made on stage. So I got to really interact with nature. That was so fun. The really cool picture, sort of in the middle at the bottom, that is a place called Puzzlewood. Now, a lot of films that you will have watched, I think even including The Lord of the Rings / The Hobbit, especially Merlin. If you've watched Merlin, you'll definitely have seen this place. It's a real place, and it's called Puzzlewood. And it is covered in this greenery. It's like a temperate rainforest. And it's got so many hiding places. There's been a lot of really cool like battle scenes or quite mystic scenes that have taken place filmed in Puzzlewood for various fantasy series and films. So that is such an inspiring place for me. It's so transporting to a different world. You might have watched or heard of the story A Monster Calls. That's where a yew tree in a kid's back garden comes to life at exactly, I think it's 12:03 at night every night. and comes and tells him stories. So his friend is a yew tree. And on the bottom right there, you can see a character. That is a character called Treebeard. So Treebeard is from the Lord of the Rings. That was a creation of Tolkien. He's in the second Lord of the Rings book. And Treebeard is this heroic character. He is a tree, but he's called a tree ent. That's his kind of species. And he comes alive and he speaks and he moves really slowly and really powerfully. And he speaks to the rest of the forest. And the hobbits discover him. They climb up into his hair, I guess, into his kind of tree canopy. And he comes alive and he speaks to them. And then he realizes that they're in danger, that Isengard is kind of in danger. So he takes himself and the rest of his treants over to fight. So they are really strong, heroic characters. So that's an example. You can kind of go off of something. That's a very visual example you can look at today for your characters. Yeah. So you're going to use the skills that we're learning today to create your own characters inspired by nature. But we're going to look at how you can make them really interesting and really engaging. So we've got some words here to start with. So I mentioned one of those words earlier on. You might have missed it, so don't worry about that. But I mentioned one of those words, transformative. But we have got relatable, expressive, imperfect, courageous, and transformative. So these are 5 really interesting words. And I want you to take a couple of minutes to figure out what they might mean. Now, you might already know, so maybe don't share your answers just yet, but write it down. You can have a bit of a discussion. Don't put them in the chat just yet, but I'll give you 2 minutes. And once you think you know these answers, you might know all of them. You might be great at this. You can share them in the chat and we'll see what everyone says. So yeah, have a couple of minutes. If you're watching back on this, you might want to pause the video now and then play in a couple of minutes, but have a couple of minutes to get the definitions down for those words.
Fabulous. So yeah, so discuss with your fellow ambassadors what you think these words might mean. You might start noting them down. You might have a bit of paper to hand. So your teacher, let's see how fast they are at typing in the chat. That's the question. So that your teacher is ready to type their answers in the chat. Or you just might have them on the tip of your tongue ready to share them at that moment. So just discuss it for now. Don't put them in the chat just yet. But work them out. There may be some, they seem to get longer as they go on, that are harder. Some of them you might recognize parts of the word, and so you might be able to have a guess. Okay, I feel like your brains will have been warmed up now. You've had a full morning at school. They should be super warm and ready, to be fair. Shall we see if we think we know? I'm going to hope that if I click one more time, it doesn't just show them all. Phew. Okay, so in the chat, which one are we starting with, Daisy?
Let's go with relatable. What do we think relatable means?
Oh, we've got one for not perfect.
Oh, someone jumped
Imperfect already. So go with relatable now, guys. So if it's St Andrews, if you think you can have a guess at what relatable means, we'll come back to the other one. You may well have got that right. It's fine if you're not sure, as we will be able to help with the answers.
To understand.
I think that's an interesting way of putting it, actually.
Yeah, there you go. So you've actually the word understand is in there. So relatable is someone or something you understand and feel a connection to. So whoever put in there to understand, you were absolutely along the right lines. That's fantastic. Shall we have a look at the word courageous?
Got a lot of vowels in that word.
Yeah.
It's a hard one to spell.
Yeah. Courageous. What do we think? Okay, we've had one answer in.
Brave. Let's see. This is impressive. You are actually using the words that we have in our definition. It's pretty good going, guys.
Yeah, so I like that. Courageous is a really interesting word because it's not just about being brave. It's about being determined enough to use your bravery. So that's kind of even one step further than just brave. That's a really interesting word.
And we did have one in early doors for this one,
Yes.
next one.
So for
Not perfect.
imperfect, someone mentioned, yeah, not perfect or has mistakes. Someone put that in. Yeah, there we go. Absolutely spot on with that. Having a weakness or fault.
And that's something that we can all say about ourselves.
Yeah. I think what's interesting about that is maybe when you're creating a character, maybe they are going to be imperfect because most characters are, most people are, but what is imperfect about them? And is it a strength or is it a weakness? Because your imperfections might also make you kind of stand out. Or maybe you do have a weakness or a fault, but your character finds a way to use it to their advantage, maybe.
Absolutely. Celebrating them. Nice. What about expressive then, guys? If you are an expressive person or character, what does that mean? Let's see if we can go for a full suite of pretty much textbook definitions.
Yeah, these have been spot on. Is that one a hard one? Oh, got something. Right. To feel comfortable and give emotions. Pour out. That's nice. I really like that. Pour out. Do you know
Right.
what? That's really interesting wording, pour out, because the way in which you are expressive, there we go, right answer, showing thoughts and feelings. Maybe the way in which your character is expressive is inspired by who or what they are. So if your emotions pour out, maybe you're a rain cloud. If your emotions kind of sprout out, then maybe you're a sapling with all these little buds coming out. That's really interesting. Yeah.
I love that. And if we don't know what our character's thinking and feeling, and we just know what they do and where they go, we don't really fully understand them very well, do we? So that's really important.
Yeah.
Let's go for the last one then, guys.
Okay. Transformative. I feel like that's quite a hard one to define. So yeah, maybe just throw in anything that you want. Can change. Brilliant. There you go. Causing a major change to someone or something. And I think transformative as well. You could really explore the word transformative because your character could be transformed by something externally outside of themselves. Maybe it's an event or another character that transforms them, or the transformation comes from within, sort of a realization within themselves or a decision within themselves. Yeah, you've got a lot of option using transformative.
Yeah, and we hope Shinfield St Mary's you are managing, because I feel like you might be having some technical problems. So we hope you're managing to join us and hear some of the session, and if not, we hope you're able to watch the recording. Fabulous. So some important words that link to character.
That's fantastic. Wow, you guys got those so great. That's brilliant. Well, looking at our characters and how we build stories around our characters, the stories tend to be built around the characters, don't they? The characters are pretty central to the story. You might have a where and a what and a how and a why, but if you don't have a who, then nothing's really going to happen, is it? So when authors are building characters, they do it very carefully to influence how the reader feels about them. So normally an author has an idea about this character and they want to kind of get you, the reader, on board. They want you to see them in that same way. So they'll use descriptive words, a wide range of vocabulary to make you feel that way, and specific choice of the words that they use. So does anybody recognize the first character on this slide, the character on the left? Does anybody recognize this character? You can share it, you can shout it out or put it in the chat if you recognize who this character is.
This is a character that I don't know huge amounts about, but I think I know their name.
I feel like if you know this character, you love this character. Yeah.
What about anyone else? Does anyone else know who this character is? Do you know the name? Do you know where it's from? Whether it's book?
Groot. There we go. St. Andrews have come in with it. Groot. Guardians of the Galaxy. Absolutely. That's Groot. So how would you, I wonder what words you would use to describe this character from the way that they look. So what's the appearance of Groot? What characteristics would you write down for this character based off of what they look like? Have a think about that. So words like cheeky, mischievous, or maybe quiet or shy, charismatic or energetic. And have a think as well when you're thinking about these words. How might you feel if you were to meet this character face to face? So have a think about some of those words. Maybe share them in the chat, some words that you would write about this character to get your creative brains going.
And don't worry if you have not seen Guardian of the Galaxy, if like me, you do not know Groot, because
Yeah.
it's from the image, from what this character looks like, how do they come across? So don't worry if you don't know them, that's not a problem. Oh, we've got some nice ones in there. He's a tree. What an amazing character. I love characters that are trees. I should know more about Groot. I feel like this is my homework after this session, guys. I'm going to learn more about Groot
Friendly,
as a
cute,
tree.
funny. I like that. Friendly, cute. I wonder, those words, friendly, cute, funny, I think the key to that is in the smile that this character's been drawn with. I think if this character had been drawn with a frown and instead of a waving hand, if it was like a claw, then I think you'd say some very different words. That
So
might help you to think about your characters.
and
Yeah.
I think I share some of those words. I thought he looked cute. Friendly, definitely. The fact that he's waving, the way that he's acting, like the behavior, his movements, definitely make him seem friendly. And that
Mm,
little smile.
yeah.
Now, I feel he has like, he does seem to have a little cheekiness. I can see him being a little bit cheeky. I
Yeah.
might be right, I might be wrong.
Mm.
And do we think we'd like to meet that character?
Mm.
Would we be happy to bump into that character on the street? Or if that character visited our classrooms, would we be nervous? You would.
Bring him with Otis. That's a
Bring
great suggestion.
Right. Okay, we've got some planning to do, guys.
Yeah.
Otis and Groot.
Get
What a
Groot.
duo, what a double act.
Absolutely. Get them together.
I'll mention that.
That's brilliant. So you've had to think about the character you can see on the left. Now, the character on the right, that is also Groot. That is Groot as adult Groot, grown-up Groot. But maybe you would use some slightly different words to describe this character. What does the character, take away that he's Groot, take away that you know who it is. How would you describe the character on the right? Because I think there's very different kind of attitude and characteristics that comes across from the picture on the right. Physically, he looks very different. There's kind of a different energy, a different focus from this character.
Yeah,
Love,
we said friendly, funny, and cute for the first one. I'm not sure whether I'd use those words for the second one.
yeah, I love this. Someone's come straight in with big, strong, angry, tall, powerful. Very different.
What about that question about this person coming to your classroom, bumping into them on the street? Would we
Mm.
want to meet this one, this character?
Mm. Yeah, how would you feel about this character? I think that's important to think about.
Because remember, when you guys write stories, your reader meets them for the first time as well, bumps into them, not on the street, but on the page. How are they going to feel about them?
Mm. You guys have been so, like, you're so keyed in with this. I feel like you're really along the right lines. This is going really
I think we
well.
might have some writing talents right there in the classroom.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What about you, Daisy? How would you feel if you bumped into this this character in the street?
Yeah, I mean the character on the right is much taller than me. I think I'd probably mistake him for Treebeard. He looks a lot like Treebeard. It just shows, doesn't it, how much inspiration can come from trees to make characters. I think that's brilliant. Yeah, I think certainly a bit intimidated. I'd be a bit wary, a
Yeah,
bit careful. I think it's unclear whether he's entirely good or entirely not good. So I think I would
yeah.
be, yeah, I'd be
Is
kind
he
of,
focused? Is he angry? I can't really tell, but I think that he's
yeah.
definitely someone I'd want on my side.
Yes, rather than being against. There we go.
Absolutely.
Yeah, scary, intimidating.
Intimidating's a really good word, actually. Fab.
That's brilliant. Wow. Well, yes. Well, so you guys can see, so you've just shown us and shown each other how an appearance of a character can really influence how you feel about them. But we can build up more complex characters by adding different layers to them and giving them kind of a place in the story and how they might interact with other people. So as you've just seen, we've got Groot. So Groot is a tree turned person sort of figure, but not all your characters have to be human or even kind of humanoid. They don't sort of have to look like a human. You can be super creative with the characters that you put in your stories. So if your story is designed to get a message across about nature and the environment, then you might want to pick something in nature to be a character. So you could pick anything from a leaf to an acorn, to kind of plant to a blade of grass. You could pick a branch that's fallen off a tree. You could pick wildlife that moves within a tree. You could pick an owl or a squirrel, or a bat, something that interacts and relies on nature. You could even pick a tiny ladybird, something like that.
Robin, that was your best friend in Secret
There we
Garden.
go. In the secret garden, my best friend was a little robin, and even that robin had such a personality and really interacted with me, and kind of led me into the garden. So that character was really important, and kind of was,
Transformative, almost.
yeah, transformative. Absolutely, the robin had a transformative role in that story. So have a think about what the personality might be like of the pictures that you can see on the screen. So on the left, we've got a small sapling. Before we carry on though, does anybody know what kind of tree this is? It's the same tree, left and right. They're the same type of tree, but what tree is it?
Oh, that's very fast in the chat.
Great. Someone knew it straight away. I was going to say, there's no waiting.
Amazing, isn't it?
People know. They've met Otis. People know.
I know.
Oh, well done. That's fantastic. So yeah, this is an oak tree. So on the left, we've got an oak sapling. So if you were to characterize this sapling, put them in a story, how would you describe them? What words would you use? What personality does this character have? This oak sapling. Where do you think they are? Have a go at that. Have a go at thinking of the personality of a sapling character. Have also on the right hand side, you've got, like I said, you've got the same tree. It's still an oak, but much older. This is a very old oak tree. It's in a place called Witchwood in the grounds of Blenheim Palace, and this tree is over 1,000 years old.
Wow.
So what kind of personality might a 1,000-year-old tree have? What kind of character does this inspire compared to the sapling? Have a think about them both separately and how you describe them, with different personalities.
And sometimes I find it easier if I relate these to a person I know. So I might think of somebody who I know who's younger, and then I might think about what their personality is like, and that might be what I use as kind of my ideas for the personality for the one on the left. I might think about somebody who's older, or maybe even it's a character that I've seen on a film or on TV, and then think about their personality. And then that might be the kind of personality I create for the character on the right. In fact, I've got a character from a film that makes me think of the one on the left, which is bizarre because it's an oak tree, but it still works.
Yeah. I think it's about the color of these different pieces of inspiration, whether it's a sapling or an ancient oak. I think it's about the colors and the shapes and the weight as well. If you look at the sapling, you notice the sapling's got a really thin stalk already. Really, really thin, not even a trunk yet, but really thin. And the leaves, there's only a few, and they're kind of very light green, and that's very delicate. I don't want to kind of give too many sort of hints, but the word that comes to mind for me is delicate. But if you look over at the ancient oak, it's much broader. It's huge. It's heavy. Think about the weight in which it would move. It's got big bowing branches that stretch out, so it takes up a lot of space. If you think about people that you know that maybe take up not a lot of space and they kind of really stick to themselves, and maybe they're quite quiet or quite reserved, but this oak stretches out, so it sort of doesn't give anybody a choice. It's going to invade the space whether they like it or not. Maybe that influences. You can also see on this ancient oak that it's actually sort of split down the middle. So maybe it's kind of been through a battle. Maybe it's got a bit of history, because that kind of indicates that something might have happened at some point, which is really interesting. Family branches, might be saying, yeah.
And I love that you said delicate, I think, and we had fragile and vulnerable describing that first one. So it's similar ideas, I think, in terms of that character. But it's interesting because kind of fragile, vulnerable, that might lead you down. Is this character shy? Is this character more nervous? Is it quite a quiet character? Or is it, even though it's kind of a little bit more fragile, sometimes young people can be quite boisterous, quite bouncy, quite lively. So you can have two characters that are similar, that are both oak saplings, with very different personalities.
Yeah, I think that is sometimes a really clever thing that you can do, is actually switch people's perceptions. So you could have this character of the sapling, and everything that is quite obvious about what you might assume about that character, make them the opposite. So make the sapling kind of like a terrifying sapling, or a really, really mischievous, kind of like strong, maybe it's kind of like a bully character. That would be quite funny to see something that's not quite the same. Or the oak tree, maybe the oak tree is a really sort of like shy, quiet character. If you've seen the film Sing, if you guys have seen the animation Sing, one of my favorite characters is the elephant in Sing. But the elephant is the most timid of the characters, but you don't think of elephants being timid. So I think that can be really interesting when you kind of switch what the normal perception might be of that character visually.
The oak tree on the right reminded me of the old man from Up,
Yeah, there you go. Brilliant.
in another animation. But yeah, that was for some reason the character that came to my head.
Oh,
So
that's
my
brilliant.
initial, and he's quite a transformative character. If any of you guys have seen Up, he starts off as a bit miserable in some ways, a little bit grumpy, and then goes on this adventure and meets different characters and has quite a transformation. And you can have a character that does the same. Fabulous. Okay. Oh, sorry.
There we go. Yeah, so you can start to develop these characters. So sticking with these two different aged oak trees, you've now decided a bit of personality, but what about how they speak and they move? So I mentioned a really important word, weight. The weight of the character. That's a really important thing to take into consideration. So with the sapling, how might this sapling speak? So if they're going to be kind of cheerful, energetic, and positive, would it yell? Would it chirp? Would it whine? Would it groan? Would it be a very inquisitive sapling, which means it asks a lot of questions? Is it a very curious sapling? Would it kind of follow you around, or do you think it would run away? How quickly would it move? Did it kind of go, or would it sort of move slowly through the soil? And think about the same thing for the ancient oak. So this big ancient oak, would it bellow, or would it yell? Would it chirp? Would it make a kind of light wispy sound, or something really sharp? And attention grabbing, or would it be a very low and slow voice? How would this character move as well? Would it be a slow stomp, or does this character move quite quickly and quite heavy? Have a think about, how you would bring those characters to life, essentially.
I guess that links a bit to like the personality you mentioned there about the oak saplings. One could be a bit of a bully. They might stomp about, compared to a nervous character that might tiptoe, might move in a different way. So just some ideas. By the way, I love the thing in the chat about the tree being like Medusa. I completely
Oh,
get where you're
wow.
coming from there. I love that, like the creativity. Well done. So give us some ways. So maybe start with the oak one sapling on the left. Tell us, how would this oak sapling speak? How would it move? So give us some more words that you could use to talk about its movement and its speech. Is it yelling? Is it shrieking? Is it whispering? Decide what kind of character you guys are thinking that this oak tree is going to have, and you're going to tell us a little bit more about the character you're settling on for that oak tree by the words that you're using. And remember, it's all about how we react to it. So are we going to think this is a great character? Are we going to love this character? Are we going to be a little bit unsure about whether we like this character? And the words that you pick will decide that. Quite high pitched, quite quiet.
Just realised I was muted. Yeah, I was just about to point out the same thing, high pitched. I really like that someone's been so specific to even say a pitch. Like where does that voice sit? That's really cool.
But it helps me as the reader start to imagine it and start to really get into the mindset. And you're already, guide, creating a character that I'm feeling a little bit of empathy for. Like, I'm a little bit concerned about how this character is going to do, if they're going to get into struggles because they're quite soft and quite weak and quite timid. And I'm already kind of wanting to champion and support that little oak sapling because of the words you guys are using. So that's amazing. That shows the impact. What about the big old oak tree? How might it speak? How might it move?
You guys have got a great vocabulary. All of these words are brilliant and they're so specific.
Yeah.
You've been really specific about these characterizations. So I'm really enjoying
I can hear its voice. Which is always what goes wrong when you read a book and then you watch a film after and they're never quite like it exactly how you pictured and you.
Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, because you kind of create your own world in your brain and then it might not match what the film is.
Oh wow, they're already starting to write in St Andrews. They're already getting
Oh my
pen to
goodness.
paper.
Amazing.
Well, as you're writing, guys, because I'm aware time is ticking on, there's one more thing I'd like you to think about with your characters. So creating tension, Daisy.
Yeah, creating tension. So tension is a way that your story kind of gets to go somewhere. There's sort of an obstacle, something to overcome or something to battle. And if everyone kind of gets along really well, there's not really a story. There's nothing to kind of wait on and see what happens. It's all very predictable. It's all very clear. But what we want to do is add tension to our story. So you can see on the screen, there's a picture of a rabbit, a young bunny rabbit. Now, you might want to just jot down or just shout out to one another together, just quickly. How would you describe this bunny rabbit as is? Just as you can see the bunny, I think quite sweet, quite a nice, gentle, soft. How might the bunny rabbit feel? What's the texture of their coat? How would you describe their face? Very sweet face.
I think we had one of the words earlier, vulnerable. I think of rabbits as being quite vulnerable. They're always listening for things.
Fluffy, innocent, that's nice.
Innocent, yeah, nice.
Would you like this character? Would you want to meet this character? Have a think about that.
I would. I'd like that character sat on my knee right now. Like seeing as I just.
Oh, someone said moody. Interesting.
Yeah, or thinking differently, creatively.
Okay, so we now can see a second image. So you've described this bunny rabbit. So maybe generally that bunny rabbit is quite sweet, quite nice. But what if in the story we had a young sapling and the bunny was eating at the sapling, chewing at its leaves, and kind of really getting in its face and pestering it? What if the bunny was doing damage to the sapling? How might we characterize those two characters in that story? So who would be the hero in that case? Who would be the kind of enemy that needs overcoming? And how might your description of the rabbit change if the rabbit is the villain? So would you describe it as wiry, sneaky, kind of dark, menacing, scary, gritty? How would you describe that rabbit if it was the villain?
Instead of focusing on its big ears, I might talk about its sharp teeth. Someone's mentioned Rosie's rabbit's quite moody. That's where moody came from. So maybe this one's cheeky, a bit like Rosie's rabbit. Absolutely. So that description creates the character. So it could be a really positive, but you see that turning from that positive little innocent rabbit could actually become a real menace. And
Yeah.
that's something that we want you to think about, because I know that you guys are ready to get writing, so I don't want to hold you up with your mission.
Amazing. Yeah. So your mission is going to be to create a story that centers around a tree. So it could be that about the nature that surrounds a tree, the people that live near the tree. It could be about the environment, the wildlife that relies on the tree. Think about the relationship the characters have to the tree. So you can see in one picture there's loads of animals around the tree. So it's quite a good relationship, quite a reliant relationship on the tree.
You might have no humans whatsoever in that story.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. You've got complete creativity. There might be people, there might not be people, it might be animals. There's even a picture there included, kind of in the middle at the top, of a Christmas tree. So how might that change your story? That gives an indication of a season of the year. So what characters might you put in a Christmas story? So you're going to have a few minutes now to start writing this story. So start thinking of your characters and writing a story that is centered around a tree. So we've given you a little bit of inspiration there, a little bit of kind of an idea. You might want to go out in nature and get inspiration from nature itself for some of your characters. So like we mentioned at the beginning, you might find growing pieces of nature, or maybe bits that have fallen off a tree or fallen off a plant, that you can take inspiration from. The environment is also an inspiration. Your tree, you can see a picture there. There's a pond. Now, what different characters exist if there is a pond in the story? So think about the environment. We've also got different times of the day. So we've got daytime on the left there, is all quite bright. And then on the bottom right of that slide, there's a picture of nighttime. So maybe you want to set your story in a certain time zone. So
You
yeah.
could even use your school grounds as inspiration. I know that some of you have got some amazing nature in your school grounds. Some of you have got beautiful oak trees that stand in your grounds. You've got apple trees and fruit trees that you've planted. So you might use one of the trees in your school grounds as your central tree that your story circulates around, or that it involves. But what we just want you to do now, just for the next couple of minutes, is we just want you to think, what is your story going to be about? How is the tree involved, and what characters are you going to use, what characters are you going to create? And we'd love to hear what your ideas, what you're thinking about. Now, obviously, you might go away after this, and when you actually write it, you might change it a little bit. But I think when you guys have got amazing ideas and you share them, it helps other people think of their ideas too. It helps them create theirs. So what do we think? What is our gut reaction? What do we want to base our story on? Do you guys know whether you want to have people in it? Do you want to have animals? Your story might just involve trees. We saw those two trees, those two oak trees in the last slide, that could have very different personalities. Could have a bit of a battle between those two. So you might have nothing that's got a face on it when we see it in real life, but you create such an amazing personality that you'd never guess when you read your story.
Yeah, absolutely. And think about as well what roles that your characters might be playing. Maybe you're going to pick a hero, pick an enemy. Is there anyone that we are supposed to dislike or be a little bit suspicious of? Is there anyone that we're supposed to really like? Is there kind of a, we use the word, you might have heard the word protagonist. Is there someone that we are for, that we are backing in this story? Is there someone, maybe an underdog, and we want them to have their time? Have a think about that. And also think about whether our journey with your characters changes from the beginning to the end. Sometimes in stories, someone starts out as a villain and they actually transform and they become a good person, or a good character. So have a think about that, because that can also make it really interesting for us to read and follow the changes of characters. And think about all the amazing vocabulary that you've used today. You have some fantastic descriptive words when we've looked over the other characters earlier on in the session. So keep up with that. Keep using all those fantastic words. Think of as many words as you can to describe your characters and give them personality and describe their movement. Think about that. What is their movement? What's their speech? I'm really confident that you guys are along the right lines with this. Yeah.
And you might have a message that you're trying to get across in your story. So we had Daisy talked about the secret garden and the robin that kind of introduced her to the garden and starting to appreciate it and care for it. So you might have a message about caring for the environment, caring for nature. So it might be kind of about looking after young trees, the young sapling in that story, or young fruit trees. So you might have a message that you're communicating in there. But what we do really suggest is that you do think about those characters before you get started, because otherwise the words you pick might not show the character that you intended to. Whereas if you fully think about the characters first, like we've just done, that's really going to help you get that information across to the reader when they're reading. It's going to help you pick your words, your vocabulary that you're using. So hopefully you've had a bit of a think. You might have talked to other ambassadors in the classroom with you. We'd love if you have, if any of you have got an idea, a plan for where your story might take place and who might be involved, please feel free to share it in the chat. We get you might want to keep it under your hat as well until your masterpiece is completed. But what we would really love to read at some point in the coming weeks is to read your story. Now, it doesn't need to be a really long story. It doesn't need to be a full thing that lasts hundreds of years. It can be just a short story. It can be an extract. Whatever you think is achievable for you. But we just wanted to centre around a tree and have one or two characters in it. So as much as or as little. Zoe will share if you wanted to read it. Zoe, you know that we would absolutely love to hear what you've got so far. That would be amazing. Especially after your poem from last time. We're still working on it. Look at you all beavering away. I love that.
1
minute, please. Yes, don't let us rush creativity. I know how creative you guys are at St Andrews. And hearing other people's might inspire. There's no such thing as stealing when it comes to writing. There's always borrowing and being inspired as far as I'm concerned. So yeah, so if you hear other people's, you like something, you like a word they've used, you can borrow it. We all use the same words. I love how all writers and authors have their own ways, and some of them are on the floor in some of those schools.
Really focus
Whatever
it.
way is comfortable for you guys. And remember, you don't need to get them finished now. We expect you to need to take a little bit of time to get them finished off. And that's absolutely fine. That's what we would expect. This is just a little snapshot of what you're thinking, where you're getting started. And I always change things a lot when I write things. I always scribble bits out and change words. We've got Isabel's. Wonderful.
Great. I can't wait to hear some of this.
Okay, so Isabel's got a bit quiet, so
Okay.
she's asked me to read it to her. So I'm going to try and do my best to give it credit. So this one's Simon, the Sapling, and the Grass Pixies.
Wow.
Okay. So it says, one sunny Sunday afternoon, the cheeky little grass pixies were running through the fields. The grass pixies looked a lot like little blades of grass, except they had little wings and could run around all day if they had to. And they never ran out of energy. They were running away from an angry tree. The grass pixies had nibbled the little sapling on the ground next to it, but the grass pixies were not unreasonable, and they went back and said sorry to the sapling, whose name was Simon. Simon was very calm and forgave them, and he said, "It does not matter, but to make up for it, please nibble the toes of people who cut trees down." And so they did.
Oh my gosh, that was brilliant.
Applause. That was so creative. I can't believe it. I was absolutely bought into those characters 100%.
I love that. I could have kept listening to that story. That's absolutely brilliant. I love amazing thing in that story was the alliteration. I feel like that worked really well. A sunny Sunday and Simon the sapling. I just loved that. I feel like it added real character and personality, and
Me too.
just great. And also
It definitely got a message across, didn't it?
yeah, and how the grass pixies then kind of got a new challenge, like a really great thing to go and do. I love that.
Fabulous. We've got another one, Eloise. Love to hear it.
Mm.
Okay, so Eloise is shy as well. So this one is the bunny and the oak. Once upon a time, there was a baby bunny that was bouncing on its way until it looked behind itself and bumped into an oak tree. And that is where it all began. After that morning, every day, the baby bunny would go to that very oak tree to say hi to it and bounce around it. The baby bunny did that every day until it became older. It loved its tree and did and it did that every very route until more bunnies joined in. So it just got more bunnies to join in at the end.
Oh,
Um,
brilliant.
I loved the energy. I love that it was bouncing around. I loved the energy that that young bunny had.
Yeah.
And then it celebrated that oak tree. Fabulous. Well done, Eloise.
Yeah, when I was listening to that story, I just imagined how as the bunny grows older, maybe it comes back to the tree and the tree's grown older and the tree's grown bigger. I feel like some transformation over
We're
time.
growing up together as well. And it was like a celebration of the oak. Loved it.
Yeah,
Right,
that's
Zoe, it looks like you are ready to go. Is that right? Fabulous.
Okay.
It is kind of scary. So
I've not read this one, so bear with it.
a long time ago, in the forest of Bloom, a boy and a girl were climbing the giant tree in the middle of the forest. All the school kids called it the giant tree because of its extreme height. Its bark flaky and rough, the leaves as soft as silk. The girl jumped down on the tree and ran, yelling, "Catch me if you can!" running as though someone was chasing her. "Annabella, come on, let's go. Mother told us to be back before dusk for supper." The boy stuttered, trying to coax her to come back, to follow. There was silence, a long silence. It was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. 30 long, eerie seconds went by, and then, "Toby!" screamed Annabella. Toby jumped. "Annabella? Annabella?" he screamed, half crying. There was a bright light coming from the giant. After so long, it got so bright Toby was almost blind. Squinting, Toby ran towards the glowing tree. Once he arrived, the tree stopped glowing. It was pitch black. "Hello? Hello? Where'd you take my sister?" he spoke, quivering in the cold. The tree started to pour out some liquid. Toby stepped closer. He touched the tree. Blood. It was blood. Whose blood? Annabella's? No. It can't be. No, no. It was too late. Toby vanished, gone, swallowed by the giant. And to this day, no one ever stepped foot, a toe, in the forest of Bloom.
wow.
Whoa. I've got a lot to get my head around. That was
We've got a
absolutely
round of applause in the
amazing. A massive round of applause. So the way you read that was just gripping as well. It was beautifully read. Well
Wow.
done. And what an idea. Like again, absolutely hooked on that.
That was amazing. What
I'm
a
almost
chilling
speechless.
story. And, like the tree was the villain. How interesting. Like, oh, so many questions as well. Like it's good not to answer every question for the reader. I think it's good
Yeah.
to leave a little bit of mystery. And you did that perfectly. That was amazing.
That was so, yeah, that will stick with me. Well done. We get that you guys have got to go. We have got through to 1 o'clock. So fabulous. So for anyone who's watching the recording, anyone in other schools, you've got some amazing inspiration there. So what we'd really love to see is your stories sent in when you've got your characters, you've got your setting, and you've had a go at writing a short story. Because I know that we would love to read more of what we've just heard there. We absolutely would. So if we can have some of those in, exciting and engaging characters, that was what we were aiming to do. then please do share them. I just want to say a massive thank you to those guys who've joined us live, those guys who are watching the recording. A huge thank you to Daisy for her expertise in leading the masterclass today. And thank you to you guys for joining all of the masterclasses that you have so far this year. This is our final one. So what we'd really love to see is the work that you've produced. So please feel free to send in your artwork, your writing, your poetry, your spoken word, your stories. We absolutely would love to see it. Thank you so much. And we will let you get back on with your Wednesdays, and we will look forward to seeing the stories that are produced in this as a result of this session.
Absolutely. I can't wait to read them, guys. You're amazing. Well done.